Okay, good afternoon, everyone. When I first came to Petaluma, one of the first things I did, of course, was join the Chamber of Commerce. And in the course of that, we formed a group that went out and interviewed companies in Petaluma. We had a group of people, and I, at that time, had the great pleasure of interviewing Lyle from Sonoma Technology, and came to understand in this process that Petaluma is the home to wonderful, innovative companies with genuinely a global footprint. And you're going to hear more about his fascinating company, and I'm so delighted he took time, since he travels the world, to be with us today.
Lyle, welcome. Here you go. And you can take the mic with you if you like.
Okay, so everybody can hear me okay in the back? So I'm going to try to go quickly through the slides so that we can just have an open discussion on what we do and any question you might have on environmental issues. So we're here in Petaluma, just on the north end of town. We've been here for a long time. I moved to Petaluma in 1992, I think it was, and I love Petaluma. I'm from LA originally, Southern California. So our company is an air quality consulting firm. We have PhDs, scientists from all over the country, all over the world that we hire to come work here and live here in Petaluma. So we do all kinds of things. I'm not going to cover all these, I only have a few minutes. But we do everything from climate change issues to forest fire issues to transportation and weather forecasting. I actually started my career as a TV weatherman. So we're a pretty eclectic little group. One of the things we do is we run a web page called Air Now, A-I-R-N-O-W, just like it says. And that allows anybody to log on and see what the air quality is right now where you live. So if you have a kid with asthma or you have older folks who have breathing issues, you can find out what the air quality is right now. And so we run that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do it for the whole country. We do it for many countries in the world. We do that in China. We do that. We have a project right now in Ghana, Africa, where we're doing that, so that everybody can know what the air quality is where they live. Here's a picture of the one from China. The story about China is before we got involved, air quality in China is really bad, for those who don't know. I mean, really bad. So the U.S. missions in China had air quality instruments measuring the air quality, but they didn't really understand air quality, and they had an IT, information technologist, come up with a scale. And the scale was like, 0 to 100, 100 to 200, and then 500 was the highest number. And if it was over 500, he said, it's crazy bad. And sure enough, it got crazy bad air quality in China. So that was all over the world newspapers. U.S. mission says air quality in China is crazy bad. And it was about 1,000 on that scale. It is really, really bad. So this is our office, just to show you. This is our weather center. So we're like National Weather Service. This is here in Petaluma, just on the other end of town. And so we're operating that 7 days a week, looking at weather and air quality issues. We operate vehicles that can go out and measure air pollution anywhere. We fly airplanes. We can measure literally air pollution anywhere in the world. We did a project with Google where they were running around doing Google mapping, and we were measuring air pollution while the cars are driving around to see what the air pollution is at the neighborhood scale. So we can do all kinds of things that way. I personally do a lot of testifying in court, in federal courts all across America on air pollution impacts. This is the case I was involved in where we were looking at the effects of air pollution from coal-fired power plants on downwind states. And for those who don't know, power plants put out gases called sulfur dioxide. It's the sulfur that's in the coal. When you burn it, it turns into sulfur dioxide gas. But that then turns into particles called sulfate particles. Really, really tiny particles. Kind of a hazy sky if you look at it and see them. You breathe those in, they're really bad for you. So this is a case where the state of North Carolina was suing the Tennessee Valley Authority in Tennessee because TVA didn't want to put on controls in its power plants because they said, it's North Carolina, it's your problem. So they sued in federal court, and I testified in that case, and North Carolina won that case, that TVA had to control its air pollution because it was affecting North Carolina, crossing state lines. This is a really great program, kind of fits with what you do with the dictionaries. We have a program where we go into schools and we teach children about air pollution issues. And we actually have a kit, and if you see here carefully, you can see the kids are holding in their hands an air pollution device. They can walk around and measure air pollution, and then you see the answer on your cell phone. So we go all over the world teaching children about air pollution. And the idea of kids making sense, sort of a double entendre there, that they can learn about air pollution and make a difference. And so it's a really great program. We'd love to see that in every school, actually. That's something we're trying to work with nonprofits to try to come up with the money to do that. Another thing we do is we make phone apps, and this is something I'd highly recommend you download for free. We do this for the US EPA, and this application on your phone allows you to look on your phone and immediately know what the air quality is where you are right now, as well as anywhere in the country. You can look up on the app and where the nearest fire is and whether there's any smoke heading your way. So it's a great application during the fire season. And you know, I don't know if I can leave slides with you if you want to have copies of these later. I'm trying to go through these quickly. So this is what we do most of the time, is an air quality station. So if you ever see a big white box like that and stuff sticking out the top that looks scientific, somebody's measuring something. And they're probably measuring either the weather or air pollution data. So we put those all over the country, all over the world as well. The newest thing that's hit the market are people wanting to have air quality everywhere. They want to know what it is. So there's these low-cost sensors being invented. And so we ran around Santa Rosa with a low-cost sensor just showing you could identify which neighborhoods had all their fireplaces going that night, and you could see where all the smoke was. So there's some really inexpensive things coming in down the pike that you'll be able to buy at Kmart someday. I mean, that inexpensive. Air quality is a really expensive venture. That little white box trailer I was talking about, the instruments inside that added up about $1 million per trailer. I mean, it's really expensive. Low-cost sensors, they're selling now for about $100 to $200 each. So it's really come down in price. This is an interesting little device. You see these white boxes kind of shooting up into the sky. Those are like police officers' radar guns, except they shoot up into the sky, and they're obviously a lot bigger. And they're basically measuring what direction and what speed the wind is moving at. So if you want to understand air pollution or smoke from fires, you need to understand what the wind is doing aloft. And I challenge each of you to go out and look next time when it's not raining, and you will see some clouds going that way and some clouds going that way, because in the atmosphere, the air is not all moving the same way at the same speed at the same time. And so these devices help us understand that better. And then the last thing I'll talk about is fire. It obviously affects us all dramatically here. So we've been hired, and this is really fun for us, to actually work locally for a change. We do work all over the world. We have projects in China and Ghana and all over different places in America. But we got to do some work right here in Marin County and Sonoma County, which is fun for us. So we actually put together the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for Marin County. So we actually go out and look at what all the fuels, which you think of as grass and trees, we call that fuel, where they are, what they look like, and we develop tools for how to manage them. And so on this plot, see where this red line is? We have computer models that tell you if you put a fuel break right there, that you can prevent the fires best from spreading in a wildfire situation in the future. So we work with those people to make the best possible maps for where the hazards are going to be and where to spend your best bang for your buck to prevent future fires. And then the last one I was going to show was what we're doing right now for the city of Nevada is developing literally parcel by parcel hazard maps. Because you may or may not know, insurance companies now are not renewing insurance or making your insurance rates go through the roof because they're so afraid of fire issues. So we're trying to work with people to say, yeah, that part of Nevada's got a higher risk, but my property, I've put in all this defense. I've cleared out the brush. Let me have fire insurance in my home so I can keep my home. Because all of us have to have fire insurance to keep your mortgage going. So this is a big issue here locally, is the fire hazard mapping. And we're doing that right now for Nevada. So that's just a really quick view of what we do as a company, but we do all kinds of things I didn't include in the slides. So I just wanted to open it up for questions, and I can talk for hours about what we do in any project in great depth. So if any of those are interesting to you, fire out a question. Okay, so the question was the sensors for the kids that we're doing. Where are we doing that, locally or in California? So I'm really excited to announce we just signed the contract in Los Angeles to put those kits in 100 schools in the LA Unified School District. That's the biggest contract we've gotten for those kits. Normally, we had like one school up in Santa Rosa, we had a couple schools in Coachella Valley, we've actually had schools in Thailand and Taiwan and Brooklyn, all different places, a lot of schools in Arizona we put them in, but nothing here in Petaluma. We've worked with the Petaluma high school teachers and demonstrated in their classrooms and let them use them for free. We kind of donated to them. But we would like to see it literally in every school, because the idea is you put it in the science class, and then they keep it. And then the next year, science students come in and they learn about it, and so the school gets it. One of the things that we're working with is the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. They want us to develop a program where they will pay for putting these in libraries, and we will teach librarians how to use these instruments, and then they will teach people who want to check them out of the library and take them home for a week and use it in their neighborhood. So that's also a program that's up and coming. But the whole idea is, the term that's used is democratization of air quality information. We all live it, we all breathe it. Why don't we know what it is? As you probably don't even know, because I live this every day, but by show of hands, how many air pollution measurement devices do you think there are in Sonoma County? You know, 1, 2, 100? What do you guys think? Air pollution measurements? The only ones I know of, there's one in downtown Santa Rosa. Well, they're measuring for meteorology at the airport, right. But in terms of air pollution, just one, that's it, you got it, Santa Rosa. So when all those fires were happening, if you were watching the news at night saying, oh, the air quality is really bad, that was based on one sensor in Santa Rosa.
I discovered your, what was it now?
AirNow?
AirNow.gov during the Paradise fires, and I thought it was amazing. And you could see, you could go back and look over the hours before that to see the air quality. So what is measuring? I think it's awesome that happened in Petaluma. You step that you developed that. That's amazing. Where are you getting that for that?
So there are now, AirNow, there are about 3,000 air quality measurement locations across America. But that's for the whole country. So think about for how many can be in each county. So what we do is we map them, but we use computers to interpolate between the data points. So that's how we're generating those sort of movies, if you will, those animations of air pollution. And we also, I didn't say this, but the AirNow program includes us providing every hour to the Weather Channel, to CNN and all the TV stations. So when everybody's reporting air pollution, they're getting it from Petaluma. It's kind of cool to think that. You know, Petaluma's not on there, our name's not on there, Sonoma Technology, no one's ever heard of us, but we're providing all that data for all those outlets. Question right here? Okay, Purple Air is the question. So Purple Air is a new instrument that's just been developed in the last year or so. Little tiny thing, it's only about this big, really inexpensive. Half of our company has them in their own backyards. They work. I think they cost about $100, maybe $200 for a Purple Air. They have their own network called Purple Air, like airnow.gov. You can look up Purple Air. They have their own website. The problem with Purple Airs are, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but one kind of air pollution doesn't equal another kind of air pollution. And so when they invented it, well, in what way is the kind of pollution it is? What's the chemical? So not all air pollution is equal. So there's gases, and there are particles, and then there's different kind of particles. So you can think of one kind of particle as like the smoke that comes out of your fireplace, you know, if you're burning wood in your fireplace, which you probably shouldn't do. I would recommend converting them to natural gas. But if you choose to burn wood, you get those particles that come out. That's a very different kind of particle than those sulfate particles I was talking about that come out of coal-fired power plants. And it's a very different kind of particle that comes out of a diesel, you know, locomotive engine or a diesel truck. So one particle doesn't equal another kind of particle. They're all bad for you, but if you're going to measure particles, you have to use the right instrument to measure the right kind of particle. Purple Airs were invented to measure urban air pollution, car exhaust, truck exhaust, that kind of stuff. So if you have a wildfire, it doesn't measure it very well. So for example, during the big wildfires, we did a study on behalf of the US EPA, and we compared the hundreds of thousands of dollar instrument to the $200 Purple Air. And the $200 Purple Air measured twice the value of the $200,000 instrument. So it's measuring something, it's real, but it's not as precise. So it's a good indicator of a problem, but you don't want to rely on that value as precisely. And I don't know if you guys know or not, we have a lot of staff who live in Santa Rosa. The Santa Rosa School District said, we're going to make a decision based at 5 o'clock in the morning. If the purple air is above 300, we're shutting down schools today. Take your kids home, get daycare, miss your job today. Problem is, it said 300, but it may have only been 150. So that's the problem with purple air. They're inexpensive, but they're useful for information, but just don't put too much reliability on the exact value. Yes?
So, and what you're saying, and from what I heard, is taking direction of the warming climate and all that, particularly with fires. That's something we're going to face more and more often. And what would you say, I'm not getting a feeling for how many sensors might be needed in an area, let's say like Santa Rosa.
Well, sure. There's a couple things in your question. First of all, I agree completely with the issue of fires. I think it was Jerry Brown who said it last year, so I'll give him credit. The new normal. The new normal is we're going to expect major, bigger fires every year. Not one every 10 years. We're going to have every year a bigger fire than last year. That's the new normal. Now, people don't realize this. The air pollution levels in Petaluma during a fire, the camp fire, this is how many, 200 miles away, were worse than the air pollution levels when the fire was in Santa Rosa. So that's how bad smoke can be, traveling 200 miles away. So the second half of your question was, how many monitors do we need? An area as big as Sonoma County should have more than one monitor. I would say we should have at least a dozen monitors in our county. It's all about money. It just, yeah. Well, it comes out of taxpayer dollars. US EPA pays the local counties to put out the monitors, and one per county is sort of the minimum requirement, so that's what they get away with. Yes, way in the back.
Two questions. Do you do like the hazard mapping for forests, for like the national forest? Do you work with them? And number two, how are you funded? How do you bring in how does your company bring in revenue?
Sure. Okay. So the first question was, do we do work with the U.S. Forest Service? And in fact, we do a lot of work with the U.S. Forest Service. The tools I told you we developed, a lot of those were funded by U.S. Forest Service research grants. We do a lot of work for NASA. Big effort now is to pull in information from satellites, so we know exactly where the fires are and exactly where their movement is going to be. So we develop tools for the forest fire fighting part of the U.S. Forest Service, that these tools allow you to say, the satellite says the fire is here, we know what vegetation is in that area, and then we run a computer simulation. We have a huge computer farm at our office here in Petaluma. We run these supercomputers, and it tells you, given the weather forecast for tomorrow, and the vegetation we know that's on the ground where that fire is located, what's likely to happen tomorrow with that fire? How fast is it going to grow, and what direction is it going to burn into? And so we do that every day for the U.S. Forest Service. That's one of the things we do. But hang on a second. But just in general as a company, we probably do about half of our work for governments, state, local, federal, international. We do a lot of work in Canada. And then the other half we do for industry. And the industry stuff we do is typically how to help them be in compliance better. And we are a very environmentally minded company. If you read our mission statement, we will turn away customers who want to know how to cheat the government or how to cheat the rules. We will not take those clients on. So when I take on my litigation cases, a new lawyer interviews me, first thing I always tell them is, my reputation and the truth about the science is more important to me than whether you win or lose your case. And I work for both sides. I work for private industry and government, and they both respect the work we do. So that's really important for our company.
Thanks.
Question right here.
Okay, we know the frequency and sizes of fires out there in the west, but I don't hear many fires out east. Is there a reason?
Well, yes and no. There are just as many fires. In fact, there's actually more fires in the east than the west. It's just that they're smaller. So when there's a fire in the west, there are these huge, big events. And the other thing is, in the east, when there's fires, I don't know if you travel as much as I do. I'm sure probably nobody travels as much as I do, but it's really fascinating to leave the golden brown California in the summertime and go east. What do you see? For those who have traveled, what color do you see? Green. It rains most of the time in the summer in the rest of the country. So these big fires don't get big, but there are lots of fires. So one of our projects that we work on every spring is in Kansas. Has anybody heard of rangeland burning in Kansas? Anybody know about that? So the cattle farmers or cattle ranchers, I guess is the right term for that, in Kansas, in the state of Kansas, want to burn the fields so they get fresh grass that grows, and then the cows love to eat that grass and put on weight before they go to market. And so they burned millions, between 3 to 4 million acres every year in 6 weeks. That's bigger than any fire we have in California, but they do it because they need to do it for their economic benefit. The problem is 3 to 4 million acres of anything burning is a lot of smoke. And so cities like Wichita and Kansas City and as far away as Des Moines, Iowa get smoked out sometimes. And they're saying, what the heck is going on? Where's all this smoke coming from? So we're working with the government and the ranchers there to say, well, if you guys down in this part of the state burn today, the wind is blowing away from where most people live. Don't burn up here next to Kansas City today. Wait for a better opportunity when the wind is blowing in a different direction. So we're trying to work with them not to have as big an impact. But literally, if you do a scale, there are far fewer fires in the West, far more fires in the East, but much smaller fires, but a lot more of them. Someone had a hand back here, yes.
Yeah, can you maybe give us an update on the current administration and the EPA? What's going on there?
Okay, I try not to get political, but I'll tell you that I've been working with the US EPA now my entire career. I started in 1981, for those who want to figure out how many years that's been. Almost 40 years, I guess, or something. And so I know people at EPA from a long time. And the current administrator, who I don't know if he's even been officially approved yet, he's the acting administrator, is a former EPA administrator on I think it was the Bush administration. I know people who have personally know this guy, and they think he'll do a fairer job. I mean, he's obviously on the Republican side of the spectrum in terms of environmental issues, as compared to the guy who got kicked out, who was just really bad. I mean, he was just an embarrassment when it comes to people that I work with who, in that agency, hated having him as their boss. So the good news is it's not going to be as bad. The first 2 years were much worse than the next 2 will be. The political environment as well is, you've heard this term, and I don't really like the term, but the deep state, you hear people talking about that. They make it sound negative. What it really means as a scientist, or I don't know if there's other professionals in here that are statisticians or accountants or whatever, there's momentum and inertia in government. I started my career working for the California Air Resources Board, the air pollution agency for the state of California. So I learned what it was like being inside government. It's like being in an aircraft carrier. I mean, it's really hard to change direction. And that's the way the US EPA is. So even though every 4 years, or every 8 years depending, you get a new administrator, the people in the trenches doing the hard work that are trying to protect the air and the water and all those things, it's got so much momentum, it's really hard to change course on that. So I'm very optimistic actually going forward. Yes?
Going back to the international thing, what about India and Delhi? We were there in Delhi, the little after the CU.
Right, so So the question was, what about India's air quality? And if you don't know, India and China are competing to see who has the worst air quality. It's really bad. So as a matter of fact, this little company in Petaluma, we have 2 projects in India. So we're working in New Delhi and another part of the country with these low-cost sensors where we're putting out a network like we did in Ghana, Africa. So they can't afford the hundreds of thousands of dollar instruments, but they can afford these $200 versions, the purple airs. So we put out purple air light. They're not actually purple airs. They're a little bit better than purple airs. And we put an air analysis system together so they have it on their website. You may not know this, but the rest of the world went to smartphones before America did. They don't even have landlines. They all have smartphones. So they know about the internet and they care about air quality, but their air quality isn't like their highest issue. It's an economic-driven thing. And I always remember I did work in Taiwan, and the newspaper that was translated into English would say, economic miracle, environmental disaster. It was always driving the economics came first, and then they worried about what the environmental impacts were from that economic growth. And that's kind of where India really is. China's kind of turned the corner. If you actually look at trends in air pollution in China, it's actually getting better. It's still really bad, but at least the trend is in the right direction. India is on the other direction. It's still getting worse every year. And I don't want to discourage you from traveling. I love traveling. But if you do go to China, and if you do go to India especially, wear a face mask. I know it seems weird, but a lot of what you're breathing in Indian air is like fecal matter, and it's really bad. I mean, it's really nasty. You really should wear an air mask to protect yourself if you go to India. Yes?
One of my questions is, you guys do these projects, where you go measure the air quality. Do you guys have solutions or recommendations to these countries or places on maybe how to fix the air quality?
That's really, the question was, we go and measure this stuff all over the world, but do we have ideas on how to help people solve the problem? And in fact, I was in front of a group like this, except times 100, about 500 people in the Kansas City area with exactly that question. They asked us to come in, study the problem, and give them a list of choices. And so that's what we did. There are always choices, but as I always tell my wife, who from one day to the next day is extremely progressive and to being very conservative, depending on the day, is there's always trade-offs in life. You can have jobs, you can drive your car, but if you want to drive your car, you need fuel. You can have an electric car. I drive a hybrid, so I have a little bit of liquid fuel and electric. But where's the electricity generated? Okay, solar farm, wind power, a dam. Some people don't like dams. Some people don't like wind power because it kills birds. Some people don't like solar because it creates shade on the ground and it kills animals that need soil to be warm. So there's always trade-offs no matter what choice you make in life. And so, yeah, we usually come up with at least a couple dozen suggestions for any community, but they've got to decide within that community what their priorities are. There's no right or wrong answer for each community. Yes?
How do you get your information? Do you publish any of your own studies or peer-reviewed white papers, or usually just hand it to a client, public or private, and they do what they need with it?
So the question was, does the information that we, the studies we do, how do they get published? How do they get into the public arena? And the question was, do we do peer-reviewed journal articles? The answer is yes. We've actually published in the New England Journal of Medicine. We partner with universities. They'll take your blood, look at your DNA, and we'll measure the air pollution you were exposed to, or your prenatal, or what your baby was exposed to. We do those kind of studies. Very few of the work that we do is not public somehow. If it's done for a government agency, it ends up in the public domain. The only stuff that doesn't get in the public domain is in the litigation environment, and then there's lawyer confidentiality stuff. Yes? So the question was, what are my thoughts on climate change? And I guess we're getting close to that'd be the last question, but it's an important issue. Climate change is real. Man is influencing it. Whether man is influencing a lot or a little, doesn't matter. We have some effect. We should do whatever we can to stop our effect. Am I optimistic? I would encourage everybody, I don't know if you guys are into the computers or not, but go on the internet and look under Al Gore. And you all know Al Gore did that movie however many years ago, Inconvenient Truth. He recently came out with, about 2 years ago, a 20-minute TED Talk. Do you guys know what TED Talks are? Kind of a short presentation like I'm giving here. And he is the most optimistic about climate change being solved of anybody. It was a great talk. I strongly encourage everybody to watch it. It inspired me. And the way he did it was he used factual information on how rapidly things change because people want them to change, not because government told you to change them or you thought it was the right thing to do. And so what he talked about was like cell phones. I'll give you that as an example. And the cell phone example was, cell phones were invented by, I don't know who it was, Xerox or somebody, I don't know who invented it, some company. And they paid this company to go do a survey and figure out how many cell phones could they sell in a year. And this company came back and said, they're bulky and they're expensive and they're embarrassing to hold this thing up to the side of your head. I don't know if you remember what the original cell phones looked like, but they were ridiculous. And the guy said, we might sell 1,000 a year. So the cell phone inventor said, we're not going to do that line of business, forget that. Cell phones sold 1 million in its first year, and now they're selling in the billions. And the exponential curve of that sale wasn't because government said it was a good thing or environmentally friendly. It's because people wanted it. And so what he has found is he's now looked at, I happen to have solar panels on my roof here in Petaluma. My PG&E bill is 0. I don't pay an electricity bill anymore. All I pay for is gas. And it's been that way for several years now. Once it's paid off the system costs, it's free for the rest of my life, as long as the system lasts. Government didn't tell me to do that. I happen to do it because I'm environmentally minded. But I really did it because I like the idea of getting a PG&E bill that's zero every month. That's pretty cool. So I'm optimistic that we'll change climate, change the change in climate by people recognizing there's real value. And I'll end on a negative note on the climate change, but people don't realize it's already happened. It's not happening, it's already happened. Does anybody know people who live in Miami? Every high tide, not king tide, not some super duper hurricane tide, every single high tide, the water comes up out of the sewer system in Miami and floods every underground parking garage. Property values in Miami are plummeting because nobody wants to live like that every high tide. That's every day. That's what's happening.
Mine's quick.
Yeah.
I grew up here. In the 70s, you'd see, brown air in the afternoons here during the summer in the Bay Area. So my scientific way of viewing our area is it's gotten a lot better because I don't see it anymore. What's reality on pollution around here?
The question was, growing up, air pollution used to steal a lot worse than it does today. He's 100% right. And if you give me one more minute, I'll end on this story. I grew up in Los Angeles. You guys work with kids. What's the most important time of the day for a school kid? Recess. My recesses were, it's not safe to go outside today, kids. Put your head in your desk and relax. Tell a kid to do that. The levels of air pollution in Los Angeles when I grew up back in the 60s, a typical day on that index I was talking about, the crazy index, the air quality standard today for this pollutant called ozone is 75 parts per billion. When I grew up as a kid, every day in Los Angeles was 300. A bad day was 400 to 500. A really bad day was 600. That's how much air pollution has improved, over the last 50 years or so. It's dramatically improved in America. We've done a great job, and economy is still going up. We can do the same thing for climate change. We can solve it and not destroy the economy. So I'll end on that.
Lyle Chinken, thank you so much. I have the speaker for the speaker. This is a Rotary Bluetooth speaker. And what a great job he did. Thanks again. So, one thing I wanted to finish with is that, having worked down in Pasadena myself, as you will appreciate, the San Gabriel Mountains, I remember seeing a bumper sticker, and it said it all. Clean air smells funny. So thank you all for coming. I hope you had a good show today, and we will see you not next Thursday, but next Friday. With that, the meeting is adjourned.